This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. On this segment, we take a look at some of the headlines that you might have missed this morning. We also take a look at some of the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 12th of August, and I am CS.
I am AX.
And I'm GW.
On today's headlines, Daily Nation, Uhuru rattles Oka by insisting on Raila for 2022. In the Standard, why Uhuru's men favor a Raila presidency. In the Star, Uhuru tells Oka chiefs to support Raila for president. And in the People Daily, Raila walks a tightrope as 2022 beckons.
Yes.
So we seem to have Raila in all the headlines and Uhuru in at least three of them.
Yes.
What do you have to tell us about all this, X?
Well, what Kenya needs is a Mandela moment. The promise of a one-term president who, knowing his tenure is so short, will work tirelessly to leave the country better than he found it. Raila Odinga will give Kenya our Mandela moment, and today I would like to show you why. A Mandela moment refers to the unique politics that led to the one-term presidency of Nelson Mandela. Mandela stepped down in 1999, saying, when asked about vying for office once more, "Oh no, definitely not." The unique politics to which I refer to are the politics of reconstruction and the politics of preemption. According to Stephen Skrouneck, there are 4 politics that presidents make, but only 2 are of use to us right now: the politics of reconstruction and the politics of preemption. The politics of reconstruction are made by presidents who are elected on the upheaval of electoral politics. This perfectly describes South Africa in 1994 at the end of apartheid and the election of the nation's first black president. Conversely, the politics of preemption occurs when a leader of the opposition is elected president, challenging the established order. This could perfectly describe Raila Odinga in 2022, the leader of the opposition for close to 2 decades, finally occupying Harambee House. These unique politics establish the conditions for a Mandela moment, or a one-term presidency, because presidents practicing the politics of reconstruction or the politics of preemption enter office with specific goals in mind and intend to achieve them. Take Mandela, for example. He was charged with managing the tricky transition from white minority rule to a multiracial democracy, and as such, Mandela was the rare statesman who understood his purpose, aligned it with the needs of his country, and left as soon as he was done. And I believe Raila, like Mandela, is that rare statesman. Raila Odinga can provide Kenya with its own much-needed Mandela moment. When elected, he will practice the politics of preemption and reinvigorate our democracy. He is a man who, as history has demonstrated, is humble enough to step aside when needed, as he did in 2002. A man who, after being subject to the excesses of a personalized government, knows that his job was not to become the country he governed, but to guide it to a better place. A man whose experience with governance spans across 2 branches of government and an international body, has demonstrated expertise at getting things done. And finally, Raila is a man who knows that the success of his tenure would not be measured by how much Kenya depended on him, but by how much they didn't. The purpose of leadership is to work one's way out of a job. Raila is the one-term president Kenya needs.
I think that's an excellent observation, and especially in light of the fact that Uhuru, having achieved so much in terms of a development agenda, his greatest challenge right now is uniting the country along ethnic lines. And so being in a country which has been dominated by 2 tribes, I think Raila will be able to transition us into a democracy where we can see other ethnic groupings coming to the helm of leadership.
That's true.
What do you have to tell us, GW?
Inspired by today's headlines, we would like to make a submission on Raila's mastery of negotiation politics. We shall be guided by the strategy of war known as negotiate while advancing. In politics, affiliates will attempt to claim more in negotiations when dividing the spoils than they were able to win and secure on the battlefield.
Absolutely.
They will always tend to overestimate what they bring to the table then they downplay tangible and measurable attributes and appeal more to sentimentality, their own sense of morality and fairness. And they use this to cloak the true measure of their actual contributions. Now, Raila is a master strategist and negotiator because he has a clear sense of what he brings to the table, as well as a clear appreciation for the true worth of his affiliates and opponents alike, and the extent of their self-awareness, or the lack thereof.
Yes.
Now, this is why he's the doyen of politics and remains unassailable. Let us examine the record. In the run-up to 2002 elections, he brought Mzee Moi, the professor of politics, to the negotiating table, as no small feat. And it was even said that the Jogoo swallowed Tinga. KANU and NDP were set to take Kenya to new heights. But as soon as Raila calculated the payoffs and saw that he was going to be shortchanged, he left the negotiating table. KANU, due to its history, had overestimated its worth. Now, when Raila walked away, KANU became a shadow of its former self. Raila, however, went to secure the victory with NARC coalition. We all remember the mighty roar of Kibaki Tosha and the chorus of Yote Yawezekana. History bears witness to Raila's mastery of the strategy of war, negotiating while advancing. The historical account is rich, but fast forward to the steps of Harambee House. The date is 9th March 2018. The handshake moment. Once again, we see the strategy executed masterfully, and this is exactly why One Kenya Alliance should prefer him as an ally and not as an opponent. Because as opponents, they will be sure to suffer painful psychological warfare. And to tie all of this in, I will conclude with a quote from Prince Clemens von Metternich, who was the Chancellor of the Austrian Empire before nationalism. And he was at the center of European politics for 3 decades. He asserted that, "Let us not consider ourselves victorious until the day after battle, nor defeated until 4 days later. Let us always carry the sword in one hand and the olive branch in the other, always ready to negotiate, but negotiating only while advancing."
Excellent advice.
I agree with that analysis. And so on a day when all 4 headlines belted out a chorus singing Dio Baba, our submission to you today advances the discussion on why Raila is the most pragmatic and viable option, and why all the former NASA principals should also sing that classic hit, Dio Baba. As students of government, there's an observation we have made about most presidential candidates and the people who vote for them. There's often a key oversight which arises from a focus and overemphasis on the personalities of the candidates. And whereas that has its place, the problem arises where there's a failure to consider the relationship between the executive and parliament, both at the national level and at the county levels, and what bearing this will have during the term of the presidency. Presidential candidates need to ask themselves, even if you were to win the presidency, would you have enough members of your party represented in parliament to see through your legislative agenda? And please remember that parliament plays a more crucial role under the 2010 constitution, including the budget needed to run the entire country, which in turn has an impact directly on a government's development agenda. Furthermore, as Kenya is a unitary state with a devolved system, you also need cooperation between the national executive and county governments.
Correct.
To this end, county executives need county assemblies that will enable and facilitate such a relationship by ensuring that investments made by both national and devolved governments are complementary and have congruence, thus achieving optimal resource allocation and utilization. In light of these considerations, our party is therefore much more than simply a vehicle for elections. Any person running for presidency, even if they win, will have an impossible presidency if they do not have sufficient broad-based representation in parliament and in county governments and county assemblies.
That's the truth.
Let us take a quick look at the numbers. As we speak, Musalia's ANC has 17 MPs in both the National Assembly and Senate. Weta's Ford K has 14. Gideon Moy's Kanu is also hovering there with 13 MPs. Steve-O's Wiper is slightly better off with 26 MPs in both houses. In stark contrast, Raila's ODM, which has stood the test of time unlike most parties in the multi-party era, has 73 MPs. Even if you combine all the others, they still fall shy of ODM's total. And with Uhuru supporting Raila, those 73 MPs will most likely increase. In terms of governors, ANC has 1, Kanu has 1, Wiper has 1, Ford Kenya has 2, whereas ODM has 13. What does this tell us? Two things. Firstly, Raila Odinga is the leader with the most broad-based support, second only to President Uhuru Kenyatta, who also prefers Raila to succeed him. So we should, in fact, add Uhuru's core base into our equation as well. The numbers Raila commands in Parliament and in the Council of Governors is arguably even better than an opinion poll because the elected ODM leaders are a tangible litmus test of those on the ground who identify with Raila and his movement. And this support base has remained consistent for over a decade. Secondly, this representation in Parliament tells us that when he comes to power, Raila stands a far better chance of seeing his legislative agenda sail through, including his budget and consequently his development agenda. His party having adequate representation on the Council of Governors also tells us that he is best placed to navigate the delicate relationship between the national executive and devolved governments in the interest of a unitary state seeking to optimally utilize resources and foster unity. This is why we submit, based on the numbers in Parliament and devolved government, that Raila is the most pragmatic and obvious choice. By the way, our parting shot, RUTO and UDA only have 1 MP and 2 MCs. Now, we have a 3-part criteria which we use to judge the headlines. We ask ourselves 3 questions. Is the headline topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, thoughtful or just plain lazy?
Yes.
All right, what are the headlines? Please remind us again.
Daily Nation, Uhuru rattles One Kenya alliance by insisting on Raila for 2022. In the Standard, why Uhuru's men favor a Raila presidency. In the Star, Uhuru tells One Kenya alliance chiefs to support Raila for president. And in the People Daily, Raila walks tightrope as 2022 beckons. I say that we give the winning headline to the Daily Nation, to the Standard, and to the Star.
Whoa, you're feeling generous today.
Yes. And this is why I say so, because both 3 headlines have done a rare thing. We see both Raila and Uhuru in the headlines.
That's correct, yeah.
And I think what these 3 headlines are telling us is that we have a winning formula. If we're all in agreement, I think we give it to those 3.
Yes.
Now, on to the political pieces we call cartoons in this country. We have a 3-part criteria to break down the cartoons for you. We ask ourselves, are they humorous or dry, satirical or pessimistic, effective or just plain lazy? GW, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, so with the Daily Nation, the cartoon is telling us that Uhuru is trying to see which candidate would best fit for the 2022 presidency. Now, fine, it is like relevant, but I feel like the nation is missing the point. Really, what Uhuru is trying to do is engineer an elite consensus. What nation is saying is a mind of thought that's stuck in the 90s. Square holes, round holes, it doesn't matter. They should see what the president is trying to do.
Yeah.
Indeed, and it's not each of them running, it's them running as a
group.
coalition.
Yeah.
What do you have for us, AX?
Right, so in the Standard, we're actually focusing on COVID. You have the Grim Reaper, who is the conductor, and he's ferrying passengers into an ambulance matatu hybrid that is already filled to capacity. The driver actually seems to be an EMT, an emergency response person, fully dressed in protective gear, and none of the passengers are wearing masks. At the bottom right-hand corner is a man reading the newspaper with the headlines, PSVs back to full capacity amid COVID. And he's looking at the matatu with so much skepticism. What do you guys think?
I think it's pessimistic. And it's quite an unfortunate cartoon because it might raise alarm, and that's the last thing we need in this season.
All right, so moving on quickly to The Star. And The Star kind of follows a very similar theme to The Standard, as it's also talking about COVID. Today's cartoon depicts a head of public service, Joseph Kinyua, riding a donkey drawn as an injection, representing the COVID vaccine drive. The man says, "We must lead by example." And the relevance of this cartoon is that, civil servants are now being obliged to get themselves vaccinated by August 23rd. Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
It's borrowing from the old adage of the carrot and the stick, but in this case, it's more
The
of
vaccine.
threats
Donkey and the whip.
as a stick. But I mean, in an age where we want 26 million adults vaccinated by the end of next year, surely civil servants are best placed to get it, being part of government. So it makes sense that. In order for us to achieve herd immunity, everyone should get the vaccine.
Exactly, and at the front, leading from example.
Now, in the People Daily, we have two cartoons. One is of 2017, reminiscing the dynamic duo of Uhuru and Ruto as they then were on a bicycle, and the NASA brigade drawn as one big bully chasing after them, saying NASA how. And fast forward to 2022 is Uhuru standing next to a gravestone written RIP NASA and pointing to Ruto and saying he killed you. I feel it misses the point. Yes, NASA may have disbanded, but NASA was an outfit, and the point here is the coalition and the lit consensus. Ultimately, even if you have a new outfit, it's a question of what do we seek to achieve. Just the NASA at the time was meant to beat Uhuru and Ruto, the dynamic duo. That's no longer the case. They will come to an agreement based on new terms of engagement, and there will be a new outfit, whatever its name. You cannot put new wine in old wineskins.
Yes, excellently put.
So I think we do not have a winning cartoon.
Unfortunately not.
So, but on a day we had winning headlines, 3 of them from the Daily Nation, the Standard, and the Star. We leave you with this quote from Martha Karua.
If you don't run as a presidential candidate,
Yeah.
and you had a choice between Ruto and Raila,
Yeah.
who would you support?
I would obviously support Raila, but it's far away from Raila. One, Raila hasn't declared,
Yes.
but I've said I consider Ruto unsuitable,
Yes,
and I have my own reasons.
yes.
His supporters have their own reasons, but I also have my right to speak out. I consider him totally unsuitable, but that's my view as an individual. Raila is a person who has worked for this country, a person we have worked together. Nobody is perfect. If you gave me the two, I wouldn't even have to think. I'd take Raila running.
Thank you for joining us on Winning Headlines. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to switch on notifications. You can also find us on Pang Free to Air, GoTV, and Star Times. Be blessed.